Welcome back, True Seeker. It is March 20th, 2025, and another empty act of symbolism by the federal government that will cost the taxpayers God knows how much money. Trump signs executive order to begin dismantling Department of Education. And about all that's going to happen is the signature on that paper because you can't dismantle the Department of Education without Congress. And there's no sign that Congress is going to go for it. And also, for anyone who'd be outraged if the Department of Education was disassembled, why would you be outraged? In the time of its existence, have you seen a net improvement in the nation's intelligence, in its skills and abilities? No, you've seen a net dumbing down. Just take a look at the youth of today here as we speak, March 20th, 2025. Over half the children are obese, seemingly know nothing about anything. Again, it started even before the Department of Education. It's been the deliberate dumbing down of America. That's what's been going on in this nation. And case in point of how dumb the society is the majority of people who will come across this video will think that what I'm saying is some kind of coincidence, some kind of conspiracy theory, because they've been indoctrinated at these so-called education centers. I'm going to show you yet again who really controls this nation's government and why this ritual is happening on the 79th day of the year in light of the Department of Education being created by Jimmy Carter in 1979. And you'll also see how sick this is because it's perfectly coordinated with his death, which, of course, was a high ritual. That's why he died 39 days after Joe Biden's birthday when he was the 39th president. And the two men have all kinds of parallels drawn to each other. Again, because of this nation's indoctrination centers, people think the types of things I'm saying right now are just coincidence, when it's obviously not. And what we will also do in this stream, besides expose who's really behind this ritual and who controls the puppet strings of Donald Trump and this federal government, is talk about maybe what should happen with education in this nation if we are free, which we're definitely not, but we'll just imagine that we are for a moment. So, again, the Department of Education was created in 1979 by Jimmy Carter, who left office in 1981 for the Hollywood actor Ronald Reagan, who was a lifelong Democrat who ran on MAGA before entering politics as a Republican. Same story as Donald Trump, lifelong Democrat from Hollywood who entered politics as a Republican, who ran on MAGA, the highest degree of the Church of Satan. And again, that's not an accident either. It's why Obama joked that Trump would become number 45 at the White House Correspondents' Dinner on literally the 45th birthday of the Church of Satan. But anyway, from Jimmy Carter's death to today's ritual is 81 days later. Again, gematria, which is not a coincidence, and it's something that probably takes about a second grade level education to understand. The practice of coding numbers into words. Again, President Trump equals 81. And just for the record, so does President Biden, who supposedly got a record 81 million votes, even though there was no real hype for him anywhere. I live out here in one of the most liberal states, Washington State. I never saw a Biden bumper sticker or yard sign anywhere, but supposedly he got more votes than Obama. Yeah, right. Again, our elections are rigged. And again, if we didn't have indoctrination centers and we actually had education centers where people had critical thinking skills and intelligence, they would see that our elections are obviously rigged and a mockery of our existence. But anyway, it is 81 days since Jimmy Carter died. And if you missed my video the day he died, I showed you how it was synced with Sunday Night Football before the game was played. Remember, it was his favorite Falcons versus the nation's capital. Talked about how Jimmy Carter equals 54 and how that night the coach of the Commanders, who used to coach the Falcons, was going to get his 54th win. That was the same coach who gave up the 25-point lead in the Super Bowl on 2-5 the year they moved the touchback 25 yards. Again, when he was coaching the Falcons, which equals 25. Anyway, I know I'm talking to the people who follow my channel can follow me, but again, the people who've gone through these indoctrination camps, the average American that gets churned out, not enough IQ points, intelligence, focus, anything to stay with the ideas I'm presenting, which truly are elementary. But anyway, again, it's 81 days since he died. President Trump 81, like ritual equals 81 forwards and backwards, and that's all this is. Again, if you are new here, you must know about the four base ciphers of the English language. I learned about them from a book written in 1926, Manly P. Hall's The Secret Teachings of All Ages. He talks about how this nation's ruled over by the occult, and they use this kind of knowledge day in and day out. You know, once upon a time I read that, and I didn't know if it was true. I had to look into it. I had to do my own research, which required a work ethic and a level of curiosity, something that most people don't develop at all in indoctrination centers. They become dumb, lazy, and they get their piece of paper when they're 18 and they think they're done learning for life. That's what our indoctrination camps do for the average American. And remember what Trump said when he was running the first time. What did he say? He was grateful for, how did he phrase it? The dumb people, the dopes. I forget how he phrased it, but something like that. Pretty much his whole base. Anyway, and no, that's not an endorsement of the Democratic Party. No. Like I said, this federal government's a complete joke. I don't endorse either side. You'd have to be a dope to do such a thing. Anyway, 81, big time number with ritualism and totally fitting here because you got the president signing this symbolic legislation that will do absolutely nothing unless somehow the Congress gets behind it. But then even then, is anything really going to change? But I will concede a point that if you did get rid of the federal government's tyrannical hold of the education system, it would give states a fighting chance to put a better system in place. But again, even at the state level, it's much of the same. So anyway, just for now, again, Jimmy Carter, 39th president, died 39 days after Joe Biden's birthday, was replaced by Ronald Reagan. Remember, Reagan came into office and ended the 444-day Iranian hostage crisis with the skills he developed in Hollywood. And remember what happened right as Biden and Trump were transitioning? They worked out a hostage deal in Iran, and nobody blinks an eye at how they just contrive this repetitive history. But check this out. Look how mathematical this gets. And again, this is really actually basic mathematics, but the average American who goes through 13 years of pledging to the 13 stripes and learning about 13 colonies and all the freedom, these things might be a little bit too complicated for them. Again, from October 17th, 79, the anniversary of the Department of Education being created, to today is 154 days later. 154 is interesting because 201 is the 154th composite number, okay? That 201 is going to be the thing here. Jimmy Carter died on 12/29, like 1229, which is the 201st prime. And we're going to come back to this right here. The Superior General today is 129 days after his birthday. Remember, he's the leader of the Jesuits, whereas Pope Francis is the first Jesuit Pope. If you've ever heard the term Black Pope, that's the Superior General, the leader of the Jesuits, who's Arturo Sosa right now. Remember, days after his 76th birthday, the headline emerged that Donald Trump was the first Republican president to get 76 million votes. Not to mention Donald John Trump equals 76. But anyway, it's 129 days after his birthday that this ritual happens. And what is 129? In base 8 counting, it's the number 201. So think about how perfect that is. You have all the mathematical connections to 201 here. 154 days from the anniversary of being created. 201, the 154th composite number. Jimmy Carter, who created the department, dead on 12/29, the 201st prime. And again, from the leader of the Jesuits' birthday to this, 129 days, which is 201 in base 8 counting. Think about how the first Jesuit university in this nation's Georgetown, which again was created in 1789, the year that George Washington became the first recognized president. And of course, this is a big number with the Jesuits. The Jesuit Order 201, I've educated about 1 million times. I should have finished my book. I should have just put out my book as I had it written about 4 years ago with 201 and the Jesuits. It really was enough then. I just tried to make it too perfect, and I still haven't put it out to date. But the point is, I've educated about this a gazillion times. Why Pope Francis is the first Jesuit Pope, the first to live in Suite 201, why his name's Francis when the Jesuits are from France, and the last French Pope was the 201st Pope. Now the Jesuits were saved by Catherine the Great with 201 Jesuit priests. Now the Jesuits were created 201 months after Martin Luther penned the 95 Theses, et cetera, et cetera. It goes with Martin Luther King Jr. being assassinated on the 95th day of the year, like Martin Luther wrote the 95 Theses, and then the nation's first major gun control come and gun control legislation coming 201 days later, and on and on and on. And by the way, all these mass shootings, the big ones that people remember in the history books, from Columbine to Dune Blaine to, Sandy, H, they're all big 201 rituals, which shows you who's really behind them. But yeah, again, Pope Francis, his birth name, Jorge Mario Bergoglio, equates to 201, just like the founder of the Jesuits, Ignatius of Loyola, 201. Catholic Pope equals 201. Think about how important the Catholic Church is to the history of this nation even existing, since it was largely created by people who wanted to escape the tyranny of the church. Think about how founders warned about what could happen to this nation, how it could be subverted if the Jesuits came out of suppression. All the stuff I always say. But again, that's why freedom of church and state is a core concept in the First Amendment, because the church was the government of Europe when this nation was being created, and the time the Jesuits were suppressed because of their criminal atrocities and their interference in governments and politics, and their just will to control, and the lengths they go to control. Again, if you know the phrase, the ends justify the means, you should look into the origins of where that idea came from. They say it traces back to the Jesuits, because they do anything to get their way, including murder. But anyway, look how perfect it is. And think about the Catholic Church, too, when it comes to education. The biggest private body of educational centers in the world is the Catholic schools, Catholic private schools, just like the hospital system, Catholic Church, all about it. What was the simulation for the scandemic put on by the Jesuit Klaus Schwab? It was called Event 201. Anyway, this ritual at the Department of Education just happens to happen on the 94th day of the Pope's age. 94th day. And consider that today on the calendar that's named after the Pope, that was introduced by Christopher Clavius, the Jesuit priest, today's March 20th, 320. Roman Catholic Church also equals 94 and 320 in the base ciphers. And I was thinking about that too, how it does seem as time moves on, we get closer and closer to having a theocracy. And you literally see a lot of people in the political sphere who get a lot of attention that do want this theocracy. I even see YouTube, and again, Google's completely Jesuit controlled. It's why they celebrate their birthday on September 27th, the anniversary of the Jesuits being recognized by the Roman Catholic Church, the day leaving 95 days left in the year. And Sundar Pichai, who equals 201, is the current head of the company. He did a mass layoff through emails in a 201 ritual a couple years back for Google. But anyway, you just see a lot of these people that are being, promoted in political conservatism. They want more of a theocracy. And you think about the open border policies, bringing in a lot of Catholics from Latin America. Don't be surprised at the direction they are moving, that it does become a lot more, everything becomes a lot more religious and Catholic in time. These people move at a snail's pace, but in 100 years time, it could be completely Catholic. All the signs and symbols are there. I mean, you have a House of Representatives with the Roman fasces on the wall. Most people don't know that Washington, D.C. was once called Rome on the Potomac and owned by a man who gifted the land to the government. And his name was Francis Pope, not to be confused with Pope Francis, the 266th Pope, who spoke in D.C. on the 266th day of the year, when the Jesuit motto, "E Sus Hominum Salvator," equates to 266. So yeah, again, Department of Education, created in 79. Now Trump's pretty much empty symbolism today on the 79th day of the year. Again, 81 days after Jimmy Carter died, when again he left office at 81 and was replaced by the other mega guy, Ronald Reagan. Another actor, another puppet. And again, I mean, this stuff is going over people's heads. How? Again, it was bad before the Department of Education even came around. This nation's been about indoctrinating its youth for a long time. It just gets worse with time. Because the thing is, when Ronald Reagan was in office, about 1 in 500 kids in school might have been overweight. If it might have been 1 in 1,000, whereas now it's 500 out of 1,000. And think about how crazy that is. dumber than ever, fatter than ever, younger than ever. How has our technological advancements done for our youth? Dying from all kinds of disease and illness at younger and younger ages, SIDS, all kinds of stuff. Things that you're not allowed to talk about on these Jesuit-controlled platforms. You're not a medical professional. Only the medical professional. Oh, let me go talk to a medical professional about these things. Oh, look at this. They don't know the answer to anything. We had a visit with the doctor today, and sweet lady said, again, our girl just turned a little more than or she just turned 4 months on the 16th. She's a little more than 4 months old now. And they say you can begin feeding your child other foods at about age 4 months, other than breast milk. For children that are blessed enough to have breast milk, some have to drink formula, which isn't quite as healthy. But the doctor's answer today was, "Oh, I don't know. I mean, the research is unclear. We were at this point, we pretty much just feed them anything." Like, come on. I mean, like, this is ridiculous. And again, why is it this way? Because they want us just dumb and ignorant. You can't have an opinion on anything. The only thing the doctors know to tell you is, "Oh yeah, I think you should get all the shots. I think you should give them all the shots." I just made a point. I just said, our little girl hasn't gotten any shots, been perfectly healthy. You see, she's perfectly healthy. I said, our neighbors across the street, they got all the shots right when their child was born, and then they were in the hospital a month later because their kid had COVID. And the doctor goes, "Yeah, that happens sometimes." I was like, "Well, do you see the point I'm making right now? No shots, live right across the street in the same area, totally healthy, baby with all the shots, in the hospital with COVID." It goes over his head, it's coincidental. Well, and sorry, I don't know what else to tell you. I don't know what food to feed him. Sweet lady's like, we read that avocados are good. He's like, I don't know if that'd be true, but yeah, avocado's probably all right. Again, the reason an avocado would probably be a good food to eat is because it's not all loaded with sugar, has a lot of nutrients, a lot of good essential fats. But yeah, and that's what's wrong with the indoctrination centers that we have. Again, I'll always tell the story of my brother-in-law. My brother-in-law was born in 1962. I'm born in 83. My sister's a lot older than me, and he's older than her. He's a doctor. And when I was a teenager, I started to really get into nutrition. And at the time, I had learned that eating a plant-based diet, I thought was the optimum diet. And I think there are a lot of positive things about a plant-based diet, but I think where a major setback can be for a lot of people is your gums. I think your gums might not get as many. And again, there might be a way to supplement better, but if I had any kind of health setback, I think it might have caused a little bit of gum deterioration for me. So I don't eat just a totally plant-based diet, but I still eat majority plant-based diet. Anyway, the point I'm making is my brother-in-law used to make fun of it. And, 10 or so surgeries later for his continually going out knees and back problems and eggs and cramps and other medical ailments. You know what diet he's now on? He's now on a plant-based diet, 20 years after I learned about it, and he's a lot healthier. Again, he's a medical doctor, and these doctors, they go through school, they learn certain things. It's not like all of their knowledge that they learn is bunk, but they're not teaching anybody critical things. In our 13 years of slave school, we learned nothing about nutrition. Doctors don't learn anything really about nutrition. You ask the doctor today, what foods do you suggest we start out our child with? I don't know. I mean, really, you can feed them anything. It's like, oh, great. How much are you going to bill me today? I don't have anything because I pay insurance, which is a fortune, but I know you're going to bill hundreds of dollars for this quick visit where you literally offered us no information. You put the stethoscope on, you took some measurements, you said, okay, this percentile, this. And it's just, again, this whole system's such a racket. And again, look to the education system for why it is. And it's because it's all bought and paid for. Somewhere back on that shelf, I got Marion Nestle's Food Politics. Again, Marion Nestle, who used to work for the FDA, she's written several books about how corrupt the FDA is and the food pyramid and how it's all bought and paid for science. It's not really promoting nutrition. It's promoting the interests of the biggest agricultural capitalists in America, if you will. And by the way, if you don't know about your textbooks in your public school classrooms and really even your private school classrooms, I mean, look at who's really the money behind those textbooks. It's the same major corporations that have established their big box stores all across the country. We're literally being taught how to be consumers and to work cash registers at Walmart. So, yeah, for anyone out there who's thinking like, "Oh my God, getting rid of the Department of Education," it's like, have you noticed that nobody's really educated in America? Again, just to stick to my state, Washington State. You know, the average student spending all these hours, all this time learning about Washington State history, and most of this is just all bullshit. And then they get out and they get their little piece of paper when they're 18 years old, and now they're qualified to go work at Walmart or Target, not really anywhere else. Meanwhile, here comes the Indian, or, yeah, you know, probably Indy's probably 19, 20. His education, which might as well have been in a cardboard box in an impoverished nation, somehow, some way, he developed all the skills to go right in there at Google, Amazon, Facebook, you name it, all these big tech companies out here in Seattle. He's making six figures. He has the skills to do it. There wasn't nearly financial massive bill attached to his education that taxpayers paid for. Again, look at what the average Indian's education cost and their development. It was almost nothing. Over here, taxpayers having to give up an arm and a leg to prop up these schools all over the place that churn out all these fat little dummies that can't get a job. Again, does Aktesh from India, fresh off the boat, know anything about Washington State history? No, he doesn't know. He doesn't give two shits about it either. But he's walking into Google and he's making $300,000 because he knows how to write code and he knows how to do math and he has critical thinking skills and he can read and write better than the average American can. And he also probably speaks two other languages. In America, we spend so much time learning about bullshit history. And I'm not saying history has to be bullshit, but it's all bullshit that we learn in America. Literally everything is worthless. The whole point of the indoctrination is so you get this idea that America is this really great, holy thing, better than every other country in the world. And this is pretty much what everyone's walking around with in their head. Oh, I'm so blessed. God bless America. I'm from the greatest, freest country there ever was. I don't know shit about shit or any other place in the world. I couldn't identify hardly any other country on the map anywhere else. But I know this is the greatest place ever because I was told so. Yet I have no critical thinking skills. My language skills are weak. My reading comprehension's terrible. I'm not very good at math. I know almost nothing about science. God forbid you ask me to get in front of a computer and code. I don't have any skills for the times. Again, this is the work of the Department of Education. So, yeah, anyone who's like, oh, my God, I can't believe we're dismantling. Again, it all needs to be dismantled. And it even needs to be dismantled at the state level. Look at our ancestors, you guys. There was no like even real established education system in the early 1800s. Look at the structures that exist in this country from the early 1800s. Some of the most beautiful, most magnificent buildings ever erected here. And I mean, even look at the older world in Europe and some of the structures that still stand. They didn't have any state or government-sponsored education system. What they had were people who were allowed to live and spend their early years learning from the capable people around them, their own fathers, their own community, uncles, grandfathers, people who had real skills, actually learning from people who cared about them so that they could go out and do marvelous things in the world. Instead, in America, you get shipped to the classroom to spend 8 hours a day in front of adults who don't give two shits about you. They're there for their paycheck. They're being told from their masters, okay, this is the lesson plan for today. Today we're going to open up to page 15 and we're going to read about Paul Revere. Okay, we're going to take the test on Paul Revere. Was he riding a pony? Was he riding a leprechaun? Was he riding a tortoise? Again, these are I know, he was riding a horse. Look at me, I'm going to get an A on the test. He was riding a horse. Was he carrying a rifle? Was he carrying a rifle and a torch? Was he carrying a knife, rifle, and a torch, or was it all of the above? Is this not what we do in America? Oh, it was all of the above. I'm getting all the answers right. This is what the American education is. This shit is worthless. Read, write, critically think, do math, learn how to communicate. And another thing that really there should be a lot bigger emphasis on is just like why it's important to be a productive member of society, why it's good to be, or important or essential to be good to your neighbor, to be able to cooperate and work together. And again, they don't want that either. They want a whole bunch of individuals easily ruled over by a very organized cabal that controls the whole show and does it every day with these simple numerical rituals that are just too complicated for the average American to comprehend. Again, if I try to explain this to my sister, like my sister's name's Jen, she totally believes in the education system, just like she totally believes in the Bible that she's literally never read a word of. But again, if I say, Jen, don't you think it's funny that the Department of Education was created in 79 and Donald Trump is signing off on the 79th day of the year to dismantle it? She'd just get all annoyed and flustered right away. It just would be really like an unbelievable response to anyone with any intelligence, because she'd get like mad and angry about it. She'd say, I don't want to hear about that conspiratorial crap. It's like, is this the spirit we're supposed to have as Americans? Is this the spirit we're supposed to have? Because I know when this country was created, there wasn't a Department of Education, but there was this idea that you had the right to speak against tyranny and speak against a corrupt government and defend yourself from that corrupt government. What are these indoctrination centers that we call schools try to do today? What's the average spirit in there today is like my sister. They're like, we really gotta, some people are getting very dangerous today. The things they're saying, their rhetoric, guns, they're very scary and dangerous. I think we might be past the time for owning guns. This is the kind of shit that's going on from these, supposed educators. It's way problematic. And again, what needs to happen is just really Ronald Reagan, who was a complete fraud, and another liberal who went into government and grew government to this, again, it's totally Orwellian what goes on with the federal government, right? Ronald Reagan says he wants to make government so small that he can drown it in a bathtub. What does he do instead? Instead, he makes it so big you can't even comprehend it. He ballooned the thing times 1,000 compared to what it was before he got in there. How do you say the rhetoric, I want to make government so small I can drown in a bathtub, and make it way bigger? It was like it was a double wide trailer, and then after he was done, it was Taj Mahal. The exact opposite. What all these criminals do when they get in there. And it's just constantly crap like this too. Trump signs executive order to dismantle education department. And then you already see people putting out videos online. Can you believe Trump ended the Department of Education? It's like, did you guys read past the headline? No, he signed an order to dismantle it. And then if you read 2 paragraphs in, and it says he can't do shit unless Congress agrees to go along with it. So you could say he's trying to get the ball rolling. And like I said, anyway, even if they do dismantle it, is it going to be that they're cutting all the red tape for people who are actually educators so that they can set up their own school and say to their community, listen, hey, you want your children to do well? Do you want your children to be more like yours truly here running this school? Because here's my accomplishments. Here's all the things I did in my life. I want to see more young people succeed like me. I could say this about myself, right? I'm a certified teacher in the state of Washington. I've worked in public, private schools. I got out over a decade ago because I got sick of being told that I need to just stick to the lesson plan. That's not what inspires students. I know how to inspire students. I know how to connect with my students. I know how to make them want to learn and actually go home and do the homework and understand and achieve and get somewhere. But no. We want you to get just back into the lesson plan. Students not into the lesson plan. Lesson plan's not tailored to that classroom. I understand my students in this classroom, in this neighborhood, and what's going on here and the dynamics. I don't need some authoritarian from Washington, D.C. to tell me what I got to teach these students today to help them become successful people. Just the opposite. And that's the way it should be for every real educator. They shouldn't need some authoritarian from D.C. to tell them what they have to do to help their students in their classroom. Again, I know that I can model the same skills I have to younger people and motivate them and make them do things I want to do. And again, I feel like I'm a good example. And I'm not saying I'm a perfect person. My troll out there will play my clips of me ranting and say, oh, is that what you want? I don't do that in front of children. What I do in my online videos is not the same way I conduct myself in front of a group of fifth graders, like the age level I used to teach. But again, what do I have to offer children? I can teach them work ethic, why you want to apply yourself, the difference, to see the difference in what happens if you apply yourself at a young age, where you can be by the time you're 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 years old, and how much further ahead you can be, rather than you take the route of no child left behind, what was introduced in the 21st century, where all that meant was, even if you don't do jack shit, even if you don't pass the test, you don't do a thing, they're just going to move you on to the next grade level, on to the next grade level, on to the next grade level. Look, you didn't get left behind. Sure, you didn't do anything this year. You didn't learn a single thing, but you still get to go on to the next grade. Look at this. You even get to graduate. You didn't do anything. And for 13 years, your whole childhood was wasted in this classroom. You didn't achieve one thing, learn one thing, but you still get your piece of paper. That's what happened in the era of No Child Left Behind. But again, you should be able to connect with students, motivate them, show them why they want to achieve, figure out ways to connect with them on a level that resonates with their community. Again, these federal lesson plans are being sent out to the same neighborhood that is nothing like another neighborhood in this massive country. I was able to connect with my students in South Seattle by explaining the reality of what was going on in their neighborhood and how much better people were doing across the highway working at Boeing. That resonated with them. You're not going to get a lesson plan from DC that can understand those dynamics. Again, it's the same thing all across the country. But again, education needs to be so much simpler. All students really need to be able to do is read, write, critically think, mathematics, and there are other things that are important. Some science introduction. Not everybody's really into science. Some students love it. And again, like I said, if we're going to continue to have children go to school from, now that you want to go pre-K through the 12th grade, if we're going to continue that way, it needs to be so that you get your core basic education done by about the time you're in 6th, 7th grade. That's what needs to happen. And then students should be able to figure out things that they're interested in. And then they should get to choose a more specified path, kind of like when you go to college. But we all know how the college system is too. You get to college and you have to take all these BS classes that are so redundant and feel like high school again, and you're paying all this money for it. It's like, can we cut out all this crap and just get to the reason I'm here to go to school? I'm here to be a doctor. Let me jump to the stuff that's actually going to help me become a doctor, not take this and this class over here, which has nothing to do with anything. This is all BS. Again, I feel like you're essentially where we get out of high school at 12th grade, that could be done by 6th, 7th grade. Student at that age probably has ideas of things they're interested in. They know they want to work hands-on. They want to be an engineer. They want to be a mechanic. They want to be an electrician. They want to build, buildings, homes. They want to design homes. They want to be an architect. They want to be a doctor. All these different career paths out here. You might, think about it. When you were a child, didn't you have ideas of things you wanted to do? I knew when I was in elementary school that I either wanted to be a lawyer and help out people in need or be a doctor, but I didn't go the doctor route because I started to realize I kind of had a squeamish stomach and like blood and gore wasn't really for me. And that was actually kind of a mistake too, because I started being around a lot of gory, nasty stuff when I volunteered in a group home. And I realized like, oh, this is gross at first, but you can get used to it. Anyway, and maybe had I had the right adult there as a child say, no, Zach, trust me, that thing you're scared of with the blood and all that, you can overcome that easily. Anyway, the point I'm making is I think a lot of people were like me. I remember my other peers of my age, a lot of us knew what we wanted to do or had some idea. It would have been nice where instead of like going into middle school, because I remember going to middle school and I'm like, oh my God, we're learning about the Titanic again? I mean, how every teach me about the Titanic every year. I mean, do I need another lesson on the Titanic? And it's funny. I could not figure out why, and I don't know if they still do it in the public school system. But God, we learned about the Titanic like almost every single year. And I used to even wonder why as a child. And now I get it. It's like, wow, the Titanic was one of the most massive lies, one of the most and it's amazing how people don't even know it's a lie. I wish they would have taught me in slave school about the book Futility, Wreck of the Titan, written before a decade before it happened, about the largest ship, the Titan, sailing from Europe to New York, and it just happened to hit an iceberg and sink on its first sail. Again, Titanic's another massive lie, and they really got to indoctrinate with the lies and the mockery. And for people who don't know that story, again, look into who died on the Titanic. The three richest men in America who were all fighting the establishment of the Federal Reserve, which went into existence shortly after. And then we were in World War before you know it. All wars are bankers' wars. All the things you don't learn in slave school. But yeah, again, I mean, imagine that. Imagine that by the time 6th, 7th grade, you know what you want to do, and now you can enter a branch of school. It's already, it's not something that you're going to have to pay additional money to learn for, because it's already paid for by the taxpayers with all these schools and teachers we have and bureaucrats that don't help us out. But now imagine it's actually being used. Okay, now from 7th through 12th grade, I'm going to learn how to become a doctor. I'm going to learn how to become an architect, an engineer. And then, sure, maybe you've already got a pretty good foundation under your feet. Maybe you do go to another 2 years of additional school, university level, and really get essentially your master's in that thing. And then you're ready for the field. And just imagine what that could be. Imagine you have all these young doctors. They're 18 years old. They're pretty much ready to go help out their community. Maybe it does take another 2 years in the field. Maybe you get out of the high school and this pre-med thing that you're doing, and you spend the next 2-3 years in residency. By the time you're 21 years old, you're a very capable doctor. It could totally be this way. And imagine how many more doctors there would be. How many people don't go to medical school because it's so expensive and so time consuming? That was another thing I thought about when I was young, about why I didn't go the doctor route, because I realized I'd probably be in school until I was 30 years old. That's a long time to be in school. This is the way it could be and should be. And yeah, I don't know why anyone would be opposed to it. And I don't know why anyone would say it's impossible, because it certainly isn't. Seriously, for all of us who went through the 13 years of slave school, how many hours did you spend in those classrooms learning the same meaningless bullshit over and over that you knew was never going to apply to your life, and you just felt like your time was being wasted? And what's sad too is school has progressively gotten worse in terms of decent things that were offered. I'm one of the last generations where they had shop in school. They took out shop because they said it was too dangerous. You know, if you guys don't even know what shop is, that's where there were mechanical tools, a bandsaw. You could build things. You could learn, and I learned that I like to work with my hands. But I had a mom that always said, "Oh, you don't want to do that. That's what uneducated people do." And I don't think that's really true. People should do the things they feel passionate about. If you like working with your hands, you should work with your hands. You can make a great career working with your hands. And we live in a society now where not enough people know how to work with their hands. They don't really have any skills. There's like a shortage of every form of labor in need. But yeah, we just have this time wasting system. It's like it's daycare from age 5 to 18, so that your parents can go work their slave job. You can sit around in the schoolroom all day learning the same, mostly needless lessons that will have no bearing on your life. Your childhood stolen from you. Once upon a time, rather than your parents going off to work at Walmart and the other one works at Target, and then they come home at the end of the day and can hardly afford anything. Once upon a time, had you been born 100 years earlier, your parents probably would have had some awesome skills. You would have went out with them as a child, watched what they did, learned from them, grow up to emulate what they do, make it even better, learn what they do. And just like how the average human being, they often want to exceed their parents. Or if they're the youngest sibling, they want to do better than their big brothers. Yeah, they learn from them, and then they want to do even better. It's like my sister. She has 4 children. The youngest one is a boy. He grew up with his brothers, who were quite a bit bigger than him. Oldest brother was 6 years older. All of her children are 2 years apart. So next brother is 4 years older. But he was the little runt for a while, but having those big brothers and playing sports with them, he ended up being a really great athlete. And there's a lot of stories like that because you had that big brother to be around. You were the little kid on the block. You grew up around the older kids. Again, you were around people who actually loved you and cared about you and wanted to see you do well, what the world used to be. But now everyone's indoctrinated. What? We go to school. It's important to go to school. How are you going to be smart if you don't go to school? They're saying these things after getting home from Walmart. It's like, do you think you're smart? Oh, you just voted. Look at you. You got to make America great again. You voted for the chump in a rigged selection. You work a cash register all day and you think you're smart and you think you're free. You got that freedom. And again, you just look behind who published those books. Where's the money behind it? It all starts making sense. Like, damn, this book was published by Walmart. They wanted a bunch of Walmartians. They can work there and shop there. Walmart can live off them on all angles. And again, I mean, the reason this work doesn't flourish is because of exactly what I'm saying. People that are too dumb to see that this stuff going on every day is not a coincidence. And my sister, here's my sister's exact quote. Zach, if this was true, they would have taught us this in school. It's just like, it's unbelievable that you think that. It's unbelievable that you think that. You're so trusting of authorities. You think they would have taught you the code that they mock your ass with every day? No, there's a reason they didn't. And in a sense, actually, you know what? In a sense, they also mocked you in your education because did they not teach you the alphabetic order? Did all of us not come up in classrooms with A, B, C, 1, 2, 3 all up around the border of the classroom? That's so common in every classroom. A, B, C, 1, 2, 3 at the young ages. It was all right there all along. How come there wasn't ever a day where they pulled out Manly P. Hall's The Secret Teachings of All Ages and read about this code of ABC 1, 2, 3? His books about how important the secret societies were to the founding of the nation. How come in 13 years of indoctrination centers, they never talk about all of the secret societies that the founders were members of? Overwhelmingly, the founders were members of secret societies, especially Freemasonry. The nation's capital is the Masonic city. We don't learn anything about this. This is not anywhere in the curriculum. Why is it left out? All this time learning the same his story lessons and nothing about that? By the way, I wonder about this one too. Trump does this on the first day of March Madness, right? And today's the beginning of the 86th March Madness. It's the 86th men's tournament. Technically, it's not the 86th March Madness, but it's the 86th tournament. The first tournament was in 1939, won by the Oregon Ducks, but back then they were called the Webfoots. And just for the record, Webfoots 39. It's also 33, like Oregon's the 33rd state. It's always been this way. The first game on the slate today was Louisville, who won the championship in 86. They got bounced by Creighton. Again, you learn the numbers. You see the way they pay tribute to history. But I do find it interesting that it's the first day of March Madness, right? And this is going to make people mad. You know, this is an issue that's going to make people mad, right? It's another polarizing, purposefully divisive stroke of, I guess in some worlds, genius to do this empty symbolism where people won't read past the headline. So many people right now are probably just screaming, he got rid of the Department of Education. He didn't even really do anything. He signed a piece of paper saying, that's what I want to do. That's all he did, by the numbers. And 86, right? 86 is to get rid of something. So he's trying to 86 the Department of Education on the first day of the 86th March Madness tournament. You know what I mean? And what day does March Madness end this year? It ends on 4/7. Right now, the experts are saying the favorite to win the tournament is Golden. That's the coach of Florida, down where Mar-a-Lago is. In Trump's golden age, we'll see if it plays out like that. But yeah, it's all right here. I mean, you don't have to. And again, for people who wonder how I figured this out, it was asking questions. I saw there were numerological rituals going on every day with news and government. It became super uh, obvious on September 2001, back when I was 18, fresh out of my 13 years of the indoctrination centers, where, again, to my credit, my report cards always said, great student, doesn't respect authority. Great student, doesn't respect authority. Great student, doesn't respect authority. That's what my whole academic career said. And I think the reason I didn't respect authority is because I knew I was being bullshitted from all angles for all of my life. And I don't know why more people don't know that. But yeah, to be respected, you got to earn respect. And I didn't really see most of my educators earning my respect. They couldn't answer simple questions. I'd say things like, how does a man ride a horse in the darkness with a torch and wake up the whole countryside? Kind of shit you learn every year. Like, this is stupid. These are like fairy tales. What's the point of learning this every year? President Donald Trump on Thursday signed an executive order to begin dismantling the U.S. Department of Education, seeking to fulfill decades of conservative ambition to get rid of the agency, but raising new questions for the country's millions of public schools, student loan holders, and parents. No president in modern history has tried to close down a cabinet-level agency. Shutting down the department wholesale would require an act of Congress, which created the agency in 1979. It's 79th day of the year today. Society of Jesus, 79. That's the Jesuits, and how this is perfectly synced with the Pope and the Superior General. Not to mention, it's also 86 days before Trump's 79th birthday, right? As he tries to 86th of the department on the start of the 86th March Madness. Trump officials acknowledge they don't have the necessary votes to dissolve the department that way. Instead, the order Trump signed Thursday instructed Education Secretary Linda McMahon to take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Department of Education and return education authority to the states, which they can't do without Congress. So it's a whole lot of nothing. Speaking in the East Room, surrounded by school children in uniform sitting at classroom desks, Trump said, "We're going to shut it down and shut it down as quickly as possible." Don't you just hate this guy, this orange goon? It's like, what message is that anyway? Why not say something inspiring? Why not talk about how important work ethic is? Because this guy doesn't know anything about work ethic. Everything's been handed to him in life. Given $1 million as he graduated from high school in the 60s. Given rigged selections because he's born into the cabal. This guy doesn't know anything about work ethic. What do you mean? He's a businessman with towers all over. Dude, he's a puppet on the world stage owned by the bankers. That's who he is. He's a puppet on the world stage. A fat goon that advocates for eating McDonald's. Say so, you're the president of the United States. So say that is inspiring to the children. The world needs leaders more than ever. It's important to take care of your health. There's a crisis in this nation. We're going to shut it down, kids. Okay. Thanks, Mr. President. So anyway. And by the way, the things I'm saying is, again, qualified adults, people who know how to teach, motivate, who have career accomplishments, who can help young people do what they did. What are my career accomplishments? I feel like I've done pretty well for myself. I come from humble beginnings, put myself through school, work my ass off, never generated any big bills from my parents, never really got into debt. Had a home nearly paid off while I was still in my 20s. And how did I do it? Work ethic. I think that's one of the most important things you can teach to young people, in addition to critical thinking skills. Because again, if you can think at a high level, you can also make your work burden a lot less. If you can be more efficient with your moves and use your intelligence, you can make life a lot easier for yourself. People who lack critical thinking, like my parents. Well, my mom has some critical thinking skills, but my dad, not so much. My dad is a working slave. And he'll tell you today, he's like, I don't have any self motivation if I have to do it, but I will work my ass off for anybody. And I don't know why some people are that way. That's definitely the way my dad is. My dad had ample opportunities to start his own business, and he was afraid to take those steps, and it cost him a lot. Just to tell you something about my dad. Again, my dad works his ass off. He'll work 20 hours a day and not complain about it. He was hired out of high school to work for a meat shop, and that's where he worked until 2001. And keep in mind, my dad got out of high school in 1971. So he worked at the same place for 30 years, and he kind of became the backbone of that business in the 30 years he was there. He was the workaholic, always around, building up the client list, taking care of the clients. The place went out of business for two reasons. Enron took over Portland General Electric and jacked the rates way up, and freezers cost a ton to run, so the bills got really high for the place. And then also the man who owned the company, he died and his son took over, and his son was doing some shady stuff and embezzling money. And so anyway, those two things contributed to where my dad worked going out of business. But you know what? When it went out of business, you know who the contact was there for everybody? My dad. My dad could have started his own business doing the exact same thing. He was the heart and soul of the business with all the contacts. What did he do instead? Because he was too scared to rent out a warehouse and just fire it back up and do it right. Instead, he went to their biggest competitor and he said, hey, I can bring you all of their business. And they said, oh, please come over here and do that. And the thing was, I was blown away. I had not seen my dad's tax returns. My dad worked for $20,000 a year for like the last 20 years that he was there. He started even less in the 70s, which was a decent salary. But at some point it went up to 20,000, and then it just stayed there his whole time as he did more and more work and just slaved away for this place. So the place told him that if he came over and brought all the contracts over, they were going to give him a salary of $50,000, which to him felt like a millionaire. Had he just ran his own business, he probably would have became a millionaire. Again, this is why it's important to have the right knowledge and the right people helping you out and helping you think critically. Again, I was off at college when all this was happening, and I didn't really understand my dad's financials and everything going on behind the scenes. But now I look at all this in hindsight. Again, had my dad had better teachers and better guidance, and keep in mind, my dad never had a father. So, I mean, he was born into a tough situation himself. He's a good guy, but hard worker with not the right education, missing some valuable skills. There's a lot of people like my dad, and that's why education is so important too. And again, you have good people teaching young people how to think right, how to behave right, how to look at the world right, how to attack life. Again, you just help build more successful people. And so many people in this country that they're afraid that, oh man, you help somebody else out and they become successful, they might take away your business. They might actually hurt your own level of well-doing. Again, that's a false way to look at the world. It's just like when I learned this knowledge, one of my buddies from college, I was showing him how the sports games are rigged by this. He's like, this is crazy. He's like, I would never share this with anybody, man. You found a piece of gold. That was never my entire idea. I was like, okay, yeah, I see how if I keep this knowledge to myself, I might be able to take advantage of the game forever. But again, to me, it's like, no, more people need this knowledge. More people need this skill to come up. It's why I've always encouraged people to take my work and become my competitor. Start a Patreon. Do the same thing I'm doing. Look how many people in the world are doing what I'm doing on Patreon now. And I'm talking about taking advantage of the rigged sports games, using the Gematria knowledge to take advantage of the rigged games. There's a lot of people doing this. A lot of people have helped out their own life. I'm doing just fine. I like to think that, yeah, I've improved my own situation and a lot of other people's situation. And again, that's why I feel like a proper education would show people, like, yeah, you do want to do well for yourself, but you also want to do well for others, because when other people are doing well, you know what they're not doing? They're not robbing each other. They're not killing each other. They're not fighting each other needlessly. So anyway, I'm just saying, as an educator, I know that this is how my school would be. I'd be teaching the basics that are important: read, write, math, critical thinking, why it's important to be good to our fellow classmates, why we want to help each other out and make alliances. You might have a great set of skills. They might have a great set of skills, and so is this third person. The three of you together could create an awesome business. Never be anybody else's working slave. The three of you are making magic happen because you all have the right skills and you all know how to cooperate and communicate with each other. And again, also just be able to model. Again, if you've been able to do these things in your life, then you know how to model them to other people. There's this phrase in society that those who can't do teach. There's an element of truth to that, but it doesn't have to be that way. There's plenty of people who are highly capable who also go into teaching. Like I said, I had a great teacher at Arizona State University when I was there, and I believe he's teaching there again. His name is Brad Forst. I'm pretty sure if you look him up, he's still there. Brad Forst, Forst. The last time I checked, about 2 years ago, he was back teaching there. But again, very brilliant businessman. And I had him for a year before he took a departure from teaching because he had to seize the economic opportunities. He knew how to do and teach. And that's the way it should be. You should, brilliant minds who can do well by themselves and also help others. That's who the teacher should be. And those people should be allowed to set up their own schools without some kind of government permission, all this red tape, all these financial burdens and licenses and certificates and this and that. It should just be easy, Again, like I said, it might be hard for me to set up a school in this community right now because I haven't done anything in this community since I moved here at Prosser. I live in this little tiny town. I haven't taught here. I've been doing this the whole time I lived here. But I know once upon a time, back when I was teaching and when I was in South Seattle and I was helping out a whole ton of students and tutoring before and after school and a lot of parents really appreciating, I know if back then I had been allowed to just say, you know what, you guys, I'm just going to set up my own school. I'm going to rent out the open shop down the block. And from now on, you want your children in my classroom? Come on down, and then I could hire some help. Again, and don't have to run it like a public school. I had parents that wanted to drop their students off early and pick them up late because that was their work schedule. I would have been happy to do that when I was younger. I was already doing that. Yeah, you can drop your kid off at 6 and pick them up at 6. I'll be here all day, every day for 12 hours. Because that's what I want to do. I want to help out these young people. I'm happy to teach 12 hours a day, Monday through Friday, and again, give these students as much as I can. And I don't need to teach a lot or charge a whole lot in tuition either. And by the way, I mean, as much as the government collects for these schools, again, I mean, you look at what the average cost here. Let's see what the average cost is in 2025 per student in public school. I'm not even sure what it is anymore. I haven't looked up this figure in forever. It used to be a huge number a decade ago. Average cost per student for per year for public education in the United States. Okay. So it's higher now because everything's dramatic. It's probably, let's just say it's 20,000 now. It was 16,281 in 2022-23. Things are up. It's probably 20,000 now. I don't need parents to pay me $20,000 to come to my school per year. If I had a small school with 40 students, I don't need them to all pay me $20,000. What's 40 times 20,000? That's $800,000. I don't need $800,000 to run a school. No, I'm happy to teach. I'm happy to do it at an affordable rate. So again, just think about it from this angle too. Let's say when I was younger, I would have been willing to do it for if I had 40 students. I'd have to pay faculty. I'd say for my salary and two other faculty, I feel if you had 3 adults in the school with 40 kids, that would be more than enough to do a great job and make sure each student gets enough attention. My salary was less than 40,000 when I was in the public school. But now things are more expensive, so you would want a little bit more. The point I'm making is it could be way less than this. It could be $2,000-$3,000 per student. $2,000-$3,000 per student really should be ample. It should be ample. Where is all this money going to? And the taxpayers have to pay it. It's like, property taxes are insane. And again, you say like, what output are we getting for all this money we're paying for our schools? My property taxes in this little podunk town are over $5,000 a year. If I was living in Portland, they'd be over $20,000 a year. That's why my dad moved out of Portland, because his property taxes were almost up to $20,000. I don't even want to know what my sister's property taxes are. She lives in a big ass mansion in the wealthiest neighborhood in Portland. Her property taxes are probably $50,000 a year. It could be more than that. Could be more. Which is crazy too, because again, her salary a year right now is about 80,000. So I'm guessing that over half of her salary is going to pay property taxes. Luckily for her, her house is paid off. And anyway, again, this is just how government is too. These big expensive bills that are just insane, that are putting all this pressure on the adults. So think about that. Mom and dad are out grinding away to keep up with the bills, to keep up with the tax burden. A lot of their money's going to things like this. Do we need that much money per student? Really do it, because they don't spend nearly that much on the Indians. Like I said, they spend they spend $100 a year, and they get a way better education. And nobody could argue that, because just go take a look at all the big tech companies. It's all full of Indians. And then their cousins who couldn't get the job at Google are the ones calling you, scamming you, while the guy at Google on the back end's giving his information to the cousin, so he's got your phone number and can dupe your dumb American ass into sending over all your stuff. And sadly, that's not an exaggeration. That's exactly what's going on. Yeah, these Americans, it's like taking candy from babies. Here, let me pass on their data to you, and then you just call and give them this bullshit thing. Trust me, they'll hand over their credit card information, everything else. They have no common sense. But yeah, again, I think I could easily run a great school, a small school for 40 students, if I had $100,000. Well, if I had if I had this kind of budget per student, I mean, it'd be awesome. I mean, you could do a lot more. But I'm just saying, do you remember doing anything really awesome when you were coming to school? The coolest thing I remember was fifth grade and getting to go to outdoor camp for 2 days. You know how you have, did you guys do that for fifth grade? Do they still do that anymore? Outdoor school, you go out in the woods and you're like in a log cabin for a few weeks, and you got like some guy in his early 20s, or if you're a girl, you got some girl in her early 20s. It's kind of your chaperone for a week. I still remember my guy. His name was Chaz. Chaz was a cool guy, but I mean, we didn't do anything. We didn't really do anything that interesting in school. Our field trips were always really lame. Went down to the dam and saw the fish hopping up in the dam. I can't remember even, it's like we didn't do anything else besides sit in the room and read the bullshit textbook and get the same lessons every year. Like, where's all this money going to? Sure as hell no, that much money wasn't spent on anything. Got this old textbook from 20 years ago falling apart. No way. Where's all this money going to? And that's why government does need to be, again, made small enough to strangle in a bathtub. I'm pretty sure if we just got rid of the education system, well, I don't know. Things are so bad in America. Who knows? Because they've taken us to a really bad point. See, that's kind of what they've done. They've kind of destroyed humanity and made everybody so dependent on Big Brother. Everyone needs to be told what to do. So if the government's not telling you what to do every day and what classroom you need to be in and what lesson plan to follow, what could you possibly do by yourself? That's kind of what's sad is because of this system, they've taken us to this point where a lot of people couldn't fathom there not being some government directed education system. But I say at the same time, you take it away, humanity is going to have to figure out a way to become self-starters again and learn and develop skills. And like I said, responsible fathers emerge, responsible mothers who help raise up good children and give them real skills so they can do impressive things in the world like it used to be. Once upon a time, our ancestors, they would have known how to build their own house. They'd know all the flora and fauna, how to raise their food, take care of livestock. Health problems come up, probably know some just traditional medicine, how to take care of the ailment. Look at the average American now. They got a sore throat. Oh my God, do I got COVID-19? I better rush down to the ER. Holy shit, do you see my bill? $2,000. Better go work at Walmart and work some extra shifts You know what I mean? Can't pay this bill off with just my Walmart salary. Maybe they'll hire me to work at Target on the weekends. Thank God I went to 13 years of slave school. And I realize, yeah, you can do better. I have an education. I went to college. I have a master's degree. But look at the average American. The average American is pretty much the thing that I don't mean to mock, but again, I don't know how else to communicate it. The things the average American's going through. So. Shout out to Mike Rawson for being a member for 22 months. Perfect. Master builder number. Thank you, Mike Rawson. It's amazing this channel's existed that long. This is the longest the channel's existed in a long time. But again, they've allowed this channel to exist, but they've also made sure it does not get any views. I've never had a channel. It's just this channel's views are pathetic. John Mendoza. Again, Generous John says Doge traces back to the word ducks in Latin. Interesting. Interesting. Thank you, John Mendoza. RG said, I joined Zach's community last fall, and I've learned how to decode. It does change how you see life. Also, you can make money off of the rig sports. No doubt about it. Thank you, RG. So, anyway, I'm going to leave it there for now. I just had to cover the latest news by the numbers because, like I say, every day, that's what your federal government does. Rituals by the numbers. And most of it is just to keep people in the political divide. They know they got a nation of people that don't read past the headlines. Again, this headline right here is pretty disingenuous because he can't do anything without Congress. And the story is Congress isn't on board because the Republicans hold a faint majority, and they are going to need 2/3 of Congress to dismantle the Department of Education. And again, even if they did, like I said, who cares? The nation's only gotten worse in the time of the Department of Education, and it's not like it was good before that. I don't think things have been good here since probably the 1800s. The Industrial Revolution wiped out largely independent Americans, people who had some freedom, who mostly lived on their own merits, on their own land, who paid minimal taxes. It put them in cities, in factories, making them dependent on their employers and the city's infrastructure. And it's just been the direction of things ever since. People dependent on authorities who need to be told what to do, what to think, what to believe. And again, truly, like also just a culture of people who, when you tell them that the authorities are corrupt and lying to you and misleading you and duping you, what do they say back to you? They treat you like you're mentally ill. They got all the same stereotypical things. Tinfoil hat, conspiracy theorist. Why don't you move out of the country then? This is the indoctrination. Cookie cutter people. And the one thing that's changed in the 21st century is a lot of people were already that way, 20 some years ago, but now the cookie cutter shape, it's like it's gotten quite round, gotten quite disgusting. It looks like these people only eat ice cream and Twinkies, sit on their asses all day, play video games, which is pretty much what they do. So, I'm scanning this article to see. Oh yeah, that's right. That's right. Vince McMahon's wife is part of the administration. Donald Trump and Vince used to go at it in WrestleMania and whatnot. And again, I mean, WrestleMania, that's just, I'm probably pissing off half of my own audience, but I just never understood why anybody watched wrestling. It just didn't make sense to me. I was like, okay, if you know it's all rigged, you like looking at men in tights? What? Why not? What, you like looking at their bodies? Why not go work on your own body? And again, just this crap right here, too. Donald Trump and Elon Musk have aimed their wrecking ball at public schools and the futures of the 50 million students in rural, suburban, and urban communities across America by dismantling public education to pay for tax handouts for billionaires. National Education Association President Becky Pringle. Aren't Pringles potato chips? Becky Pringle said in a statement, again, Donald Trump and Elon Musk are puppets on strings, and everybody would know that if they were a little more intelligent and had a little more critical thinking skills. They are the puppets carrying out the script. It's the people who stand behind them that run the government. And again, a more intelligent society would know better. I say I got a typo in my title here again. I love to do the typos. This whole thing with the Vegas Tesla, what they say, the Tesla crash center, the Tesla collision center, where the cars were set on fire. Remember how this year began? New Year's Day. First, you had the car plow into the crowd in New Orleans on New Year's Day, and then the shootout with the cops. And then the next story was the Cybertruck at Trump Tower. And remember, New Orleans is Trumpet Town, named after the trumpet player. Well, it's not named after, but if you've ever been to New Orleans, like everything is the trumpet player, Mr. Armstrong. And then the third story on New Year's Day was the club shooting in Queens, which is Donald Trump's hometown, Queens, New York. So Trumpet Town, Trump Tower, Queens. All these rituals on New Year's Day just before the chumps reinstalled by the numbers, as we said, again, would happen 4 years in advance. So anyway, the Trump Tower thing was in Vegas. Remember, they said a military guy blew up the thing, and that military's guy name equaled 369. Like Nikola Tesla has the quote about if you knew the magnificence of 3, 6, and 9, you could unlock I forget what it is, the mystery or the secrets of the world. Again, because it was all perfect high ritual. But now here we are back in Vegas with Teslas being set on fire, right? And this news broke 57 days after they were inaugurated. Tesla equals 57, like Mars. It happened on a Tuesday, the day of the week named after Mars. Again, Elon Musk was written about by the Nazi Werner von Braun in the book Project Mars, where the lead character is the Elon. And remember the day that Musk did his salute, I showed you how it was perfectly synced with Werner von Braun, who died 47 years earlier. Like Mars has a 47-year orbital cycle, and it's the inauguration number 47. But then again, weeks later, they let you know that Werner von Braun's wife also died January 20th, the same day that Musk did the salute. Covered that. But again, 57 days after inauguration day, Tesla equals 57 like Mars. This ritual on a Tuesday, right? And a lot of the news, the local Vegas news covered this on March 18th, but a lot of the news broke the story the next day, March 19th, the 78th day of the year. And remember, if you run it in reverse, Tesla equals 78, just like Jesuit. And I'm Dark Mega equals 78. And again, Elon Musk was declared the world's richest man for the first time ever, January 7th, 2021, the 78th death anniversary of Nikola Tesla. And Trump takes office at 78 with Musk. Like there's 78 cards in the tarot deck and the top cards are Trump cards. But again, in history, when Nikola Tesla died, Donald Trump's uncle, who worked for the FBI, audited his papers. Again, just a perfect ritual with these puppets who were destined to meet through history, through books written by SS scientists. I see that I have multiple typos in this. If you guys ever notice the typos on my work, it's not that I don't know how to write. It's just that I'm doing this shit really fast, and I should proofread and go back. But there aren't enough hours in a day right now. Anyway, the point is the 57-78 thing is really obvious. Why the national news really covered this the day after on the 78th day of the year. FBI investigating Tesla vehicles. Oh, you get it more? I mean, do you start to see it more? Like, oh, yeah, Trump's uncle who worked for the FBI, who audited Tesla's papers. Okay, I see what they're doing here. There's probably something more to this resist thing. I need to look into that. But I wanted to cover, and then the whole Molotov cocktail, that goes back to Russia with all that. that puppet show that's going on as well. The average American still hasn't figured out that the same people who control the U.S. control Russia. What do you mean? They're communist. What's communism? Is that when the government and the media and the corporations all kind of work together to control everybody's life? Oh, you don't think we have that here? Have you noticed that? Have you gone down to big tech where the best jobs are? Because there's actually more Russians that work there than Americans. Grew up your whole life thinking you were so much better than Russia, but it turns out actually they're even better than you. Your country's as communist as theirs is, but they get a better education. And the proof is that there's more Russians in America working where the best jobs are. There's no argument around that. Yeah, you thought you were better than Russia until you grew up and saw reality. And don't forget, the Jesuits were preserved in Russia by Catherine the Great with 201 priests, just like how Biden and Putin met 201 days after the first Jesuit Ignatian year began to converse about the potential conflict between Russia and Ukraine before it broke out in a 201 ritual on the anniversary of the Jesuit priests implementing the calendar. Can you imagine being out on the streets of America holding up this sign, "Education is power, save our schools"? It's like, has this person taken a look at what's going on in your schools? A bunch of fat dummies everywhere that don't know shit about anything, being taught by fat, obese dummies? Because that is the reality of the situation. And again, just to remind you guys what happened to me, I decided I was going to go back to teaching in 2018. I got out in 2012. In 2018, I was ready to go back because I miss being in the classroom with students, and I still do. And what happened? We moved to Yakima. Yakima it might still be the worst school district in terms of performance in the entire state of Washington. And that's because there's a lot of poverty and a lot of parents that don't speak any English. A lot of reasons for why Yakima schools are so bad. So I thought, oh, good. Here I can go. I taught in South Seattle, which wasn't that much different in Yakima. I thought this would be a good place for me to teach. It'll be a challenge, and I can help out some students who really need it. So I get offered a job, and then that job offer gets rescinded through a letter in the mail weeks later saying that I'm not eligible for an employment in the district. I'm not eligible for employment. And in the back of my mind, I thought, I bet anything it's probably the work I've been doing online, because they didn't specify why I'm not employable. But I thought, okay, I've had this YouTube presence since 2013. That it probably has to do with that, because that's what goes on at this day and age. They vet you, they look you up on Google, they see what your internet footprint is. And eventually I did get a meeting. I know the exact date I got the meeting. It was August 21st, 18. And it's funny, if you look up where the education center is for Yakima, you'll see it's on the same street where the FBI office is for Yakima. And I'm making a point about this because when my meeting finished, I found out in the meeting that the reason they weren't going to employ me was because of what I'd done online and the book I had written. They didn't like my book, Letters and Numbers. They pointed out some things in the book that they thought were not good. And this is all bullshit. This is the worst school district with a bunch of dummies teaching, a bunch of fat, obese slobs. I'd encourage anybody to go drive past a school in Yakima and tell me I'm lying. You're going to drive past a school. It looks like these people are about to kill over in the parking lot. Just fat slobs everywhere. Probably don't know shit about shit. No clue how to connect with the students or motivate. But anyway, you're going to say, I'm not eligible for employment. I'm a great teacher. And you know what? What's in my book is worth its weight in gold. And again, we just live in a society that's lost the American spirit, where how dare you speak against the government? See, you're going to state school learning, you're being indoctrinated to worship the state. That's not what America was ever supposed to be. You're supposed to be a free person in a society that celebrates freedom, the right to speak freely, the right to protect yourself from enemies, foreign and domestic. All of that's out the window, and none of that is cherished in the indoctrination centers. And again, the thing that happened after my meeting with the school, and there wasn't like any scene or anything, and I just accepted it. I was like, okay. And it ended up being actually great for me financially, because I went home, I think it was the next day that I launched the Patreon and monetized the sports work. And I said, oh, look at this. I can make a lot better money doing this than teaching in a classroom. And a lot of people are butthurt about that. And again, it's not good to be a jealous hater. Again, I developed and pioneered something in this world that's helped out a lot of people, and I've hardly charged anything for it, and I've taught a lot of people it for free. There's a reason that my work is supported, and it should be supported by a lot more people. And if we lived in a smarter society, there'd be a lot more people supporting that. I'll tell you this: every person who doesn't support my work, it's because of a lack of intelligence. Point blank, period. There really is no other explanation. If you have some problem with my personality, that's an intelligence thing. You expect me to be perfect? Instead, you should look at the person who's worked their ass off every single day, dropped nothing but facts, exposed total tyranny, saved people's lives, enhanced people's lives. The amount of good compared to the amount of bad, it's a totally overwhelming scale of good versus a little of bad. And I trust me, I can tell you all the bad things better than anybody else. The real truth is they don't want critical thinkers. They don't want people who don't just submit to authority. They don't want people like that. They want people that follow the orders and will teach them the lesson plan. And somebody like me is considered a liability in the classroom, which is sad. And that's exactly why the whole system needs to be done away with. They'd rather have some fat, sloppy loser. Think about what that is for a kid to look at that, some fat blob as their teacher. To me, that shouldn't even be allowed. That should be the thing that's like, sorry, you're not eligible for employment here. We don't employ fat slobs. And for all the people who get butthurt about that, I'm sorry. It is not okay to be a fat slob. It's not okay. Just because half the country is now a fat slob doesn't make it okay. That's what they want. They want a bunch of dumb fat slobs so that they can make a fortune off their Ponzi scheme of insurance and medical bills and selling you pills and all the shit you need because you can't control the stuff you put in your mouth. That should be the thing that disqualifies you, being a fat slob, because that is no model to any child. And look what happens when you have schools of fat slobs teaching. Next thing you know, all the children look just like the teachers. But anyway, the point is, after I got out of the meeting, I still remember that day I came home and I told Sweet Lady what happened and I needed to run to the grocery store. I'm at the store and I can't even finish shopping because Sweet Lady's calling me up and she's freaking out. And she's like, the FBI is here and they need you to come home. I was like, what the hell? The FBI is there? And I didn't realize the FBI was on the same street as the school. But then I looked that up after. I was like, look at that. The FBI is just right down the street from the school. And then I got the FBI. I got the FBI at my house telling me, do you know why we're here? And I said, I don't know, probably something about what I do online. They're like, yeah, it's something you said. I said, well, what was it that I said? He said, you said, let's get all of our guns and kill all the Jays. And I looked at him and I literally laughed. I said, well, just like that, like, I said, no, not like like a fake laugh. I said, no, I never said that ever. I said, show me where I said that. And I still remember to this day. He gets on his phone like this. He's got one of these slabs right here. He's doing this, doing this, doing this. This is our government. You're doing this. Just scroll. I don't know how many minutes went by. It was minutes that went by. And finally, I just interrupted. I said, you don't have anything on that phone that says I said that. He goes, no, I do have it. I said, okay. So eventually he stops and he goes, I left it at the office. Like, I'll go back and get it and I'll bring it back. I said, no, you're not going to bring anything back because I never said that. So again, that night he sent me an email. He never came back to my house. He sent me an email. And in the email, there was a video that was about a year old. And Richard Quinn knows the video. I think Richard Quinn, it was the first video he saw. But it was the one where I said we need to get our guns and our pitchforks and burn the federal government to the ground because it needs to go. Because all it's here to do is exploit us, which is 1,000,000% factual. Now, there are people who need... See... Well, okay, hold on. Let me revert what I just said. Maybe it's not 1,000,000% factual because they've created this society of people who are not self-starters and who have very low skills and who need to be told what to do and have almost no work ethic and no accountability and need government to provide their services for them and pay their bills for them and help them feed themselves. And I do understand that we live in a system where government has purposely destroyed certain communities because they want to put them in prison and use them for slave labor, and there are consequences to that. But again, even still, To me, all of this stuff needs to go because it's just like if you watch that CT's channel, he has a certain guy that comes on there and brags about being on food stamps and not having to work, and he's just totally ignorant. And it's just like, see, this is exactly what's wrong. This guy sits online all day, makes himself look dumb as hell, brags about being on welfare. It's like, this is what can happen. This is the downside. This guy needs to get thrown in a wood chipper. This guy doesn't need to exist. I don't need to be paying taxes that go to this guy to feed him so that he can sit online and make himself look like a dumb asshole each day. And I understand there are some people that need some help. And here's the other thing. If those people's family members didn't have to pay their whole wage in slave taxes to the government, they could probably actually help out their own family members. They could afford to help out their own family members if they weren't having to pay tens and thousands of dollars in taxes every year, millions over a lifetime, like the average American does. Education is power. That's true. Save our schools? Ha! Who's getting educated in our schools? A lot of indoctrination, very little education. The few glimpses of education I had in slave school were from the few good teachers I had who went outside of the book and said things they probably weren't supposed to. Things that make you open your eyes and go, whoa, never heard that before. Let me look into that. See if my teacher's talking nonsense or this. Oh my God, it's true. How come I didn't hear that before? How come my other teachers didn't tell me that? Again, a lot of your teachers probably would have told you some things you should have known if they knew, and they wouldn't get slapped on the wrist and lose their job from not teaching from the lesson plan. We're going to learn about Paul Revere and the Titanic again today, and Christopher Columbus, who discovered the land where millions of people already lived. These are important lessons. We're going to learn them every year. Again, Aktesh didn't learn about any of this shit. He learned how to read, write, do math. He's got some good science skills, knows to program, ready for major employment that no American hardly at all is qualified for in the U.S. So anyway, I do got to I do got to hop off and eat some food, and then I will be back for the patrons. We're doing our sports stream tonight. We're doing things a little bit different with the March Madness tournament, so FBI stands for Federal Bureau of Incompetence. Well, again, it is a police force, and again, all these police forces, what they do at the end of the day is they limit our rights and liberties, truly. Again, there were no standing armies and standing police forces when this nation was created. It was about freedom and the right to protect yourself, the right to build up your skill set, make sure you can keep your family safe. Any crazy people are coming your way, the right to solve that problem with your protection device. Again, the average person isn't a killer. The average person doesn't just want to go out and murder people and rob people. People don't do that unless they're in a bad situation or something's been done to them. The average person would only kill another person if something really egregious was done to them, or they were so desperate it was the only way that they could stay afloat. Again, people aren't killers. And that's why the government also has to create all these serial killers and all these scary things to justify their existence. Oh, the whole nation would be Jeffrey Dahmer if the federal government wasn't here. I mean, no, Jeffrey Dahmer's a federal government creation's the reality of the situation. It's the other thing people haven't woken up to. Well, again, you can't stop paying taxes without having the IRS up your ass. And for anyone who tell you that's not true, I tell you from experience. Especially if you speak out. I've been harassed by the IRS multiple times now, and even the state government auditing service. And again, you speak out against government, you're going to make yourself more of a target. But it's just like when I was down at Oklahoma City, I had the IRS, and I have an accountant now, but they reached out to my accountant and asked for all this documentation. It was while we were in Oklahoma City. And then they came up with some bullshit that I forgot to pay some minor thing, and then came up with some fine. It's like, look at this shit. I guarantee you if I wasn't at the Oklahoma City thing, that wouldn't have happened. So Yeah, I know there's a lot of people out here that's like, just don't pay your taxes. I haven't paid my taxes for 20 years. Nothing's happened. Have you made any income? Listen, hey, if you have all cash, you can get away with that. Sort of. You might catch the watchful eye, but you can get away with it. And most of us don't have all cash, though. So, and that's why they want to do away with cash. That's why they want everything digital so they can keep surveillance on everything. There won't be any tax cheats because you won't even have a chance. They'll be collecting every tax on every penny that moves anywhere. So, but yeah, the way to not pay taxes is a revolution. And you look at this population, it's like fat chance. This population's not ready to revolt. The only Call of Duty they know is the video game. So, anyway, I do got to hop off. Thanks to everyone who hits the like and the share. And until next time, True Seeker.